Thank you for watching WISD TV and welcome to another edition of Know Your Schools. My name is Dale Caffey. My special guest today is a person who works hard behind the scenes to monitor the progress of every student in the district. Her name is Lisa Hall, and she is the director over PEIMS and also over counseling. And we're going to talk about those things right now on this edition of Know Your Schools. First of all, PEIMS. We hear it all the time in the administration building and throughout the district. I'm sure some parents may have heard it before. It's an acronym, obviously, PEIMS.
Actually, that's a common mistake. It's PEIMS.
Oh my goodness. Well, tell me what PEIMS stands for.
It stands for Public Education Information Management System.
Very good. Why is it so important to Waco ISD as well as districts all across the state?
Well, PEIMS directly affects district funding and district accountability. And the data that is stored and is sent to TEA through PEIMS is what determines our funding and our accountability. So it's very important that those numbers and that data is correct. It also can bring forth different audits from the state, and so you must have everything in order for them and in case you are ever audited.
Of course, annual PEIMS audits or PEIMS reports are available on the TEA website.
Correct.
Talk about some of the things that go into PEIMS.
Student attendance, student special program data as far as special education, ESL bilingual, homeless, GT, all of those kinds of things. Even down to students' grades, final grades, and courses and course completions. It's a discipline. There's just a wide range of data that goes in, including staff data and budget data.
I know that Dr. Kane is a stickler for being accurate at everything, and she especially started looking at PEIMS strongly when she first entered the district because you have to be accurate. That data has to be accurate. Why? You mentioned funding, obviously.
Definitely, definitely because of funding. I mean, just 1% difference in your overall district attendance rate can mean hundreds of thousands of dollars. And in this time when we are very heavily looking at budget and in budget crisis and those kinds of things, it's very important that we're making sure that we're getting every dollar that the district deserves, and therefore what children get. The money that we get then also helps children. So the more that we can get, the more that we're able to help them.
Talk about PEIMS staffing at Waco ISD. Obviously, you're over the department, but you have personnel at most every campus, I would think.
We do. I actually have 4 wonderful people who work with me here in the building, and that ranges from people who have some specialty in some behind-the-scenes technical type work of setting up the tables in our student information system to people who go out and actually do audits on campuses to make sure that they're doing all the processes and procedures. Then we have at least one person on every campus who is our PEIMS specialist. As the campuses get bigger, we have more people. The middle schools have 2 people, and then our high schools actually have 6 people, but that would include 2 registrars at each campus. So 4 PEIMS specialists plus 2 registrars at each campus.
Now, we're going to talk about counseling in just a moment because you're over counseling. But first, let's talk about the importance of having you, or the advantage maybe of having you over both PEIMS and counseling. Because as I mentioned at the start of the program, your job, as well as the job of your employees, is to monitor the progress of students from the time, I guess, they're kindergartners to the time they leave as seniors and graduates.
True. I didn't really know how much it was going to be advantageous to have a background in counseling until I took over the PEIMS department. When I was asked to take over the department, I knew just my fair share of PEIMS, but in the learning process, it's almost seemed invaluable to have had that background because I now understand, more importantly, how the pieces fit together. As opposed to maybe someone who has not necessarily been in a school themselves, because you don't have to have been in a school to be a PEIMS coordinator or work in PEIMS, but it really does. The tie-in is great, and so it's really helped to sort of blend the two together. What we always say is everyone does PEIMS. Everyone affects PEIMS, no matter what you do, from the teacher taking attendance to his or her classroom to the principal helping do a master schedule. So everyone's doing PEIMS.
Now, you mentioned something in that reply that I'm going to follow up on, and that is background. Talk about your background in education and Waco ISD as a whole.
Okay. This is my 19th year in education, and I started as a junior and senior level English teacher. Then I went and got my master's degree to be a counselor and was a counselor at a pre-K through 6 campus for 6 years. Then I became an assistant principal, and at that point really wanted to get back to my hometown, my roots. And I'm a Waco ISD graduate. I graduated from Waco High back in 1989, and I really have a heart for this district and for the students here. So I decided to come on over and became a counselor at Waco High School. And since then have just followed where people have wanted me and tried my best to do a good job in those places, and have taken on some challenges that people have asked me, and that's brought me to this point. Very
good. Let's talk counseling now, because that's really been your background as a whole. What are your plans for counseling at Waco ISD? Because obviously you're taking over the program and you have a vision of where counseling needs to be.
Since this is my 5th year in the district, and I've never really stopped working with counselors in some way or another, so I really understand where we are at this point. And I think the district has transitioned a lot, and so therefore the counseling program has changed and molded into different ways throughout the years. Now I think we're at the point where we need to just shore up some of our practices and procedures so that we can even better serve our student body and understand the student body that we have.
We're going to talk about the roles of counselors at the high school level, middle school level, and elementary level in just a moment. But one of the biggest jobs a counselor has in working with the principal of a school, and the assistant principals for that matter, occurs during the spring and the summer for the next school year, and it's called the master schedule. Yes. Those things can really be tough things to do. Definitely. Because we're talking about thousands of students all wanting to take the same courses but yet different electives, and trying to fit the needs of those students can be a nightmare sometimes.
Definitely. Really, it begins with course request, and you really start doing that in December, January, where you're already starting to ask students about next year. And for some students that's difficult because they're living for today. Right. And we're really, though, the state and is really trying to push students to think more long term, and you can see that even in House Bill 5. But so it really starts at that point, and then from there it really has a systematic, very intentional process that you have to go through in order to make sure that your master schedule benefits the students of the district. So we are going to be doing some very intensive time and work to get to that point so that we can be ready for students. And we're taking into account every student, because you have students with some special needs, and you really have to look at how those students fit into the master schedule and the things that they need to. And so it's a very complicated process, but it's a big challenge, but it's one that I'm looking forward to, actually.
Of course, back in the pre-computer days, I guess there was a big chart on the board, and you just simply started filling in that chart. I'm sure that those are still used nowadays.
Definitely.
As a visual aid, but then you have computer programs that you actually use, something called a logarithm or something. And tell me how that's done, and tell the parents at home how that's done.
Okay. Well, currently in the current system we have, even though we are moving to a new system, they basically all work the same. You have student requests that are in your system, and you have put a master schedule also into your system, and you run what's called an algorithm, and that basically is taking each student's request and literally putting them into the different places in the master schedule. And as those different courses fill up, the algorithm is going to move to a different course, and it's going to populate those courses so that you can then run some data to see, did it in fact do that in a way that is systematic and is balancing the courses. But you can even get more specific in that you're saying, I want this many students that are identified gifted and talented in each one of these courses. And you can do a lot of things to that to make sure that you have a balanced classrooms.
Very good. Let's talk about the importance of high school counselors. First of all, we'll focus on high school counselors And the way we do it here is the counselor follows a particular, what's called a cohort.
Yes.
A freshman class enters, and the same counselor will follow those freshmen through their sophomore, junior, and senior years. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And that's a very important thing because the counselor gets to know those kids thoroughly through the years, right?
That's correct. It's very, very important too. And we have what we call cohort teams. So not only do you have a counselor, but you have an IS, instructional specialist, and an assistant principal who's also part of those teams. And again, so it's more than just one person even who's getting to know each student and the needs of those students, and you're responsible for them. So it's a much better system, I believe, than necessarily going by alpha. Because that in a sense you might not have that student, you might have that student for 4 years, but as new people come and go, you're still able to still follow those same groups of students. So it's a little bit more systematic. Plus, too, it goes back to PEIMS. It really relates back to that process, in that we are accountable for the cohort. When you start 9th grade, you are officially in a cohort. And that cohort then has to graduate within 4 years in order for us to rate successfully in the eyes of the state and in the Fed's eyes. So you have to, if you track those students accordingly through PEIMS, then you're also going to guarantee that you are also going to rate high in those areas.
Every year, obviously, we have turnover in the district, including in the counseling department. But I know that one of your goals is to establish consistency, because how important is it that that same counselor we mentioned following that same student for 4 consecutive years? When that doesn't happen, the counselor coming in sort of has to inherit that cohort, right?
That's correct.
How tough is that?
It is very tough. Currently, we have a counselor who she's come in and she has seniors. And that's really difficult, because you don't know where any of those kids are, and you have 3+ years of history that you're trying to learn very quickly, so you make sure you're serving the kid appropriately because you want the student to graduate this year. So she's really doing a good job of going back, and she keeps saying, I want to know my students, I want to know my students, and I say, yes, so she's really pushing to do that. But it's very important. My first meeting with them, so to speak, when I was introduced to them, which I know the majority of them already just from working in the district, one of the things I said to them is, we've got to start growing our own. And I want you to start identifying teachers on your campus who you see have that special quality about them to be teachers, and start talking to them. Counselors.
Right.
Start talking to them about the program and help them, because it is so important that we have counselors who come from this district, who understand our student body and have a heart for our student body.
That's right. And you talk about a different skill set too, because a counselor probably is trained, and sometimes the only person on a campus that has particular training. Is that correct?
That's correct. To receive a master's degree in counseling essentially is the same degree that a licensed professional counselor outside of a school district would have. The only difference would be particularly the test. If you wanted to continue, and we have some counselors on staff who are also LPCs, licensed professional counselors, because they went the next step, which is to have a certain amount of hours, on the clock type of hours, and have taken a test to become licensed. But it's essentially the same school. It's the same coursework. So the coursework that each of these ladies have been through have literally been how to counsel people, how to really sit down and talk to people. And sometimes, unfortunately, we don't necessarily have the luxury of the lengthy counseling session that one might get outside of the school system. But that skill set that they have is just invaluable to the district and to the campus. They're really the only person on the campus who has that skill set.
And counselors are also important at the middle school level.
Definitely.
Because many times 6th, 7th, and 8th graders start thinking about what they want to be when they grow up, so to speak. And having a counselor at the middle school, let's just talk about the importance of having an effective counselor at the middle school level.
Well, for one thing, you can already begin to receive high school credits while you're in middle school. And so counselors help to identify, along with the teachers, students who are prepared at that point in their scholastic career to take those kinds of courses. But the biggest thing probably with middle school counselors is helping to transition students into high school. If I hear anything, it's our students need to know what they're about to get into, because high school is different. You know, it's about passing courses and receiving credits, and they don't quite understand that as much because they've not ever had to do that. Mm-hmm. And so our focus is going to be much more intentional as far as how are we preparing students for that transition, and what are the activities that we're doing with them in order to prepare them for that transition. And that has to be more than just talking to them one or two times. It has to be very, very intentional. And in fact, that word intentional is really been my motto so far, is we are going to be very intentional in every aspect of dealing with students in the counseling department.
Sometimes that on a middle school level, I think that could be tough, because how many counselors do you have generally at a middle school?
2.
And we're talking sometimes 900 students.
That's correct. That's correct. So it can be. But again, being part of the leadership team meetings, identifying the students who not only have issues, maybe it be behavioral or academic, and having that counselor help those students, but it's also identifying those students who are high achieving students and making sure we're giving them what they need too as well, and challenging them in the classroom.
Okay, let's talk about counseling at the elementary level, because that's a little bit different. You're not really looking as much as class schedules because they stay in one class pretty much all day long. But it's important in terms of that skill set that counselor at the elementary level has to have. Talk about that.
There is really no one who's loved more on an elementary campus than the counselor. Mm-hmm. She gets to be mom, she gets to be good cop, she gets to be all those great things. She gets to give out all the hugs and the smiles, and that is what's so wonderful about being a counselor, and that's close to my heart because I've done that. And but the counselor, again, that skill set, when you have elementary students, they haven't yet gotten to the place where they have strategies for themselves, and they a lot of times aren't articulate enough to verbalize to you the issues that they're facing. So the things that we're looking at more is what kind of strategies are we using to help students in that? And we're really looking seriously into some very, very exciting workshops that we want our counselors to attend to gain more skill set into helping students who are young and who are not able to just sit down and have a dialogue conversation, but we are still preparing them and giving them strategies for how to handle the classroom.
Lisa, obviously it's important for the counselor to make sure that the students have all the credits they need to graduate from high school. But even more importantly is getting them ready for post-secondary education. Talk about the counselor's role in that.
Well, in each high school we have a college, what we call a college lab. And that is a particular place where students can go to receive that piece of the counseling that is very, very important to them. And that's that post-secondary planning piece. So right now we're focusing on the October 15th deadline for early application entry, and we also have students who are signing up for PSAT, and we're doing things like that. And so it is so important that not only are we meeting the needs of the students here and now, but that we're meeting their needs in the future. Once they leave us, we have to make sure that students are prepared. Have they filled out the common application if they're going to stay in Texas? Have they filled out other applications if they're going to go outside of Texas? Have we made sure that they have all the financial help that they need? Have we given them all the information about different scholarships that they could benefit from? So it's important that we not only look at here and the now, that we look at that. And so that is the reason why a counselor's job is so very important. And what's great about it, though, is we have technology. And in that technology, we can help students so much quicker than we used to be able to help them, and that you don't have to do paper pencil on every single thing. But a counselor's role is very, very important on that high school level.
Now, I've gathered through this interview that you pretty much have experience from the bottom up in counseling. Is that correct?
That's correct. That is correct.
So elementary, middle, and high school.
That's correct.
Very good. So the counseling department under some great leadership here at the district. Congratulations on taking over the program. I know you're going to have a very important meeting for parents on Tuesday, October the 1st, 6:30 p.m. at Tennyson Middle School.
That is correct.
Talk a little bit about the purpose of that meeting.
The purpose really is to just have a somewhat casual time for us to introduce ourselves, for me to meet parents, for parents to meet me, for me to hear what great things they have and some concerns that they might have, and really take those and think about how can we address those concerns, and meet the needs of all the students. It's very important that parents are happy and that they feel good about their students being here.
Very good. Lisa Hall, thank you so much for being
Thank you so
here today.
much.
Again, this is Lisa Hall. She oversees PEIMS and counseling at Waco ISD. And a reminder that you can meet Lisa at a very special meeting on Tuesday, October the 1st, beginning at 6:30 p.m. at Tennyson Middle School. My name is Dale Caffey. Thanks so much for joining us for Know Your Schools on WISD TV.